we've never been more connected to, friends and family. I live, 2,500 miles away from my parents, and thank you, FaceTime.
Yeah.
I get to see my parents, every week. I get to see my brother and his kids every week. They get to, engage with our family because of it, and super fortunate for that.
What's up, guys? It's Skyler with Conversations, where we share stories, my connections, and key learnings in hopes of giving back to the next generation. I'm here with an expert in technology, specifically IoT, smart home, smart cities, and most importantly, my friend Jake Purcell. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. This is great.
It's
great
awesome
to be here with you today.
Before we get started, Jake, I just want to tell you, last night was awesome getting to go back to some of these spots that we used to run around in, and seeing the office where we both used the office out of, but you still there, and seeing that you've built this incredible career and had so much success. I just want to tell you how proud of you I am, knowing exactly where you started. I want to go back to 2009, right? We started working in the most well-funded startup in U.S. history at the time. Tell me about that experience for you, what you're up to, and ultimately how those the lessons you learned in a startup and how you applied them to your career now.
That was a really interesting time, right? It was like 2008, 2009. The economy was not in a great spot. We were, freshly out of college, young kids, trying to figure out, what we want to do for our first job. And then this opportunity of a very well-funded startup, an idea of, deploying technology was there. And, I was very fortunate, like you, to get an opportunity to get on with them. And it was, an insane experience. This is the best way I would describe it, right? It was chaos, no day was the same. We were trying to figure it out. We were like young salespeople that, like, young in our career, weren't experts either, but, they gave us a playbook to go and execute, and we didn't know any better. We're like, go.
6 something of execution, the 6 fundamentals of execution.
So I don't know. I may have
the funnel.
The funnel, yeah, the funnel of execution. But it was a great experience. I learned a ton. My job before that was really like sales, table skills, sitting down with a client with like a very regimented pitch, and then that translated into us, working together in a much faster sales cycle, almost retail style sales experience. And it taught me so much about just like the fundamentals of like regimented discipline and, how to execute like a sales strategy and hit goals. And then, growing with that company, launching new markets as we, both moved across the country. I mean, it was an incredible experience to change from just, direct sales experience to, indirect, national indirect, B2B, and setting up new sales channels and distribution for the company. And you got every facet of, doing and executing, a business playbook, to eventually, managing a P&L for a region of the company towards the end, which was, or starting your own business in your case. I mean, just incredible to do that and get that experience. And we were so young, and they trusted us to do that, I think was really unique. And a lot of it was we were willing to work like 80 hours a week. I think that might have been it. But I mean, just what an incredible experience to just get that exposure. I don't think we would have gotten it anywhere else in any other environment. So I feel super fortunate to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah, just going back to 3rd and Washington, slanging on street corners, mobile internet, anywhere you could go.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward, and it was a short time period. I mean, you made the move to Chicago, and then you ended up in Philadelphia. And, just thinking about where we started, 3rd and Washington, and then next thing you know, you're running an entire region. One of the things that, I think about often early in my career that I always share a laugh about, I think about Romo, right, who was a great leader for us. And he used to tell me all the time, if I could mix you and Jake, you guys would run the company, right? Jake is so much more polished than you. He would tell me, he'd tell me, you dress like 50 Cent early in my career, right? And he would give me that constructive criticism. And, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, like, what did you do to become so polished? Because it felt like you were such a professional even when I was 21, 22 years old, I mean, you were somebody that I was able to look up to and pick up different skills from that I didn't necessarily have at that time. So how did you become so polished, as Romo would say?
My first job out of college, essentially you had to wear shirt and tie. That was what you showed up to work in. And so it was refreshing for me to take a step back and be able to wear a polo or more business casual. But, it starts there, right? In that outward appearance of like what you want to put out into the world. And you think about that, it matters, and people perceive that a certain way. I think early on, I didn't understand that, but part of it is like you look at your environment and who you're surrounded with. Like I was very fortunate to have, a father that had quite a bit of success in his career, and he wore suit and tie every day to work, and so when you see that and you aspire, to be like that, I think that was, important to me, and that definitely rubbed off on kind of how I approach things and approached, your personal brand of, making sure that, you're putting out the right image to others. And I think a lot of folks don't understand that, especially early on in their career, that actually matters and people perceive that a certain way. How you dress, how you talk, how you act, those are, all important things for your career and your progression. And I think I had that early on, and people, perceived me as being older than I was, even though I was, early 20s, I could, put it together and pull off, early 30s or having, a little bit further on in my career just by, kind of having a well-polished kind of presence.
Yeah, I think those were two things that I really took away from that experience early in our career was, number one, dress for the job you want, right? Very
Absolutely.
Easy, simple advice that you always get, but makes a difference, right? And then the second thing I learned, and this was actually from Romo in that time period, was every day is an interview, right? And you have to treat every day like an interview. And at that time, we were the first market to launch. We're getting ready to launch nationally. We were having executives come through constantly. Yeah. And ultimately, that's what led to our next, promotions and opportunities that allowed us to move. That brings me to my next point here. We talked a little bit about the moves, and I know that's been a strategy, to progress in your career, to gain new experience. And, we both did a lot of that early on. I mean, I think of 4 or 5 different places you lived where I visited you. And, young professionals are still doing that today, right? That's very common. And I see it go both ways. Sometimes, folks go and have a great experience, like we had in many cases. And then you see people go that really struggle, right? And they're away from family, they're away from friends. And so just from your perspective, what are some of those key learnings from those moves that we can share that could be applied to the next folks that are coming up behind us?
We were very fortunate to be able to move to these different markets to take on new opportunities. And you were spot on earlier about like the network. You network and you meet these executives coming through, and that opens new doors for you to move to new places and move up in the company. I think we were at a very unique company that was, this startup that was launching new markets, and they needed experienced people that didn't exist. They'd never done it before. And so we were able to take advantage of that and move to new places. I think my success really came from, I was stretched to my limits from a skill set perspective, where I may not have been the most experienced person for the role that I was getting promoted into, but my sheer work ethic of, I was willing to work 80 hours a week and just dive in and get the job done, where, I wouldn't normally have, been able to see success if I was working 40 hours, but I was willing to do twice the amount of work to get it done. So I think that is definitely, part of that, kind of what sets you for success is just sheer work ethic to get it done in those types of environments. Your point though about, not being away from family, that is hard, and friends and whatnot. But, I was very quickly able to network with, different groups and, get in with like other sports teams and leagues and whatnot. And that helped, navigate and meet new people. And then, you use other people's networks, and next thing you know, you have, friends that you can go out with and network more. So it was a great experience, but it definitely isn't for everyone. I think within large companies, especially, there's a lot of opportunity to, jump from different departments to do, similar things. So you don't have to move across the country, like we did. That's definitely an extreme in one way to do it, but you can, have kind of similar career progression experience, just like we did if, you take the right strategy to approach it.
That was one of the things that I loved about moving early in my career is it was beneficial to me because that was my priority. And so I could go to this space where I wasn't surrounded by my friends. I wasn't necessarily surrounded by my family and just zero in on my work and to be able to get to those 80 hours that were required at a young age to do the job. We got to talk a little bit about Philly. Is it Pats or Geno's? Talk to me about the sports. I mean, this has been so great being back here and definitely an outstanding city, but want to hear from your perspective what you've loved so much about it.
One thing I loved is just like the diversity and the culture of the East Coast in general. It's just something you don't get anywhere, at least on the West Coast. All the history of America started in Philadelphia, which it's just so cool. Everything's the first, right? It's the first bank, the first church, like everything you see is the first. Independence Hall, all this, rich culture, which makes it, amazing. And then the people, rich, very diverse community, which is so different from, growing up in Oregon, specifically. So that's, something that I thought was like really unique and fun to, be a part of. And then talking about Philly, sports fans, the most passionate sports fans in the world live here in Philadelphia. It is the best. Go Phils, go Birds. After, living here over 10 years now, I've converted, right? Yeah. I'm definitely all in, and it makes it a lot of fun.
Well, I think when I was living out here, we actually went and you were rooting for the Niners at the time. Yeah. So I got to bring that up. Now you're officially an Eagles fan, and my Kansas City Chiefs got an opportunity to beat up on you last year, which was pretty neat.
We'll see the rematch this year. I want the rematch.
We'll see. Bring it on. Yeah. We got Taylor now, so we're good.
Geez.
We talked earlier about how you being so polished, right? And like you were able to, again, develop this skill set that allowed you to, sit in the same room comfortably with these executives. Your executive maturity was off the hook. And some of that, I think, was tied into education. You got your MBA from Temple. Talk to me about that experience and, again, how that's been applied in your career today and benefited you.
The MBA was really interesting, right? I think a lot of people think of MBAs as like an easy button, right? You're going to get like on the rocket ship because you got this piece of paper, right? I think you really need to think about like, what am I trying to get out of, this experience and this education and, apply it? It's not just a piece of paper that's going to, it's not a winning lottery ticket by any means. And it's a ton of work. That's for sure to get it done. But, expanding your network is definitely one of the benefits of it. That, really you're getting a well-rounded kind of set of education, like business, marketing, finance, accounting. You get this like well-rounded type of educational experience. And then a big part of our MBA program was definitely presentation skills. Like we were constantly every other week giving these presentations in front of the group and getting feedback. They were filming it. And so that really, I think, helped me become much more, mature in, my ability to go and have that, gravitas, as they say, or executive presence and feel comfortable presenting in front of folks. But I felt like I had a step up on a lot of other folks because of what we did early on in our career, where we're standing in front of large groups of people, educating them on the technology that we were selling. That was a big part of what we were doing when we were launching new markets. And I didn't even know that I was developing these new skills that would be so important later on in my career. But that really helped me, I think, set a foundation that was strong. But back to the MBA topic, it was a great experience. I think one of the cool things when we were working together at the telecom company was I asked at the time my leader to set me up with a couple meetings with some executives at the company, the president and our CEO. I got 30 minutes with them.
Wow.
To talk to them about whether or not to go get my MBA. And they gave me some interesting advice. They all told me you should do it. They also went so far extreme. They're like, apply to the, top 5 programs in the company or in the country. And if you get in, quit your job and just go to school. I was like, oh, that's pretty intense to hear that from the CEO of the company. But I mean, there's some merit to that, right? It definitely, if you're, getting into, the Harvard, Stanfords of the world, Whartons, you do it, right, Booth? But it was a great experience. I'm super glad I did it, and, learned a ton, have some lifelong friends that I met through the process too.
My experience was a little bit different. Obviously, didn't have a college fund, had to be a little bit scrappy to end up getting my degree out over, many, many years. But I wanted to ask you, did you have any assistance? I know there are many employers out there that are providing tuition assistance today. Many of them have connections to offer, 100% tuition reimbursement now, not necessarily when we were coming up. But just want to ask, was that something you took advantage of?
I definitely did. My employer funded a percentage of it, not all of it. And I took out loans for the rest, but that was huge. I mean, I think if I stretched it out longer, obviously a bigger percentage of it they would have paid for, which definitely you can do. And there's other programs that they have where they'll fund 100% of it if you go to, online universities and whatnot. So there's a lot of different programs out there and funding out there for education that you should definitely take advantage of. I wish I took more advantage of it, was more thoughtful of that so that I am not still paying off the student loans like I am today. But, it was 100% worth it for sure.
I think back to a time period where we started a new business division, a new business unit, and we launched a smart home and automation product. Mm-hmm. And we took it from 20,000 customers, I think, to 1 million or a couple million pretty damn quickly with over a couple year period. And wanted to ask you, where's that technology at today? I know you're still in the mix. Where are we at in terms of IoT and smart home?
Early on, I think we saw, there's this early adopters segment that was really interested in smart home products, and we were ahead of the curve, right? We were selling more they're buying the security product than the IoT product side of it, but it was blended together and kind of forced some adoption. But, fast forward now 10 years almost, I mean, night and day difference, right? Yeah. Before there was, the average home had 1 or 2 IoT products in it, right? Now, dozens, right?
I just used your door lock.
Yeah, I use my door lock and doorbells and speakers and all the different smart stuff that's out there. Smart toilets, you name it. I think that's the biggest difference is the adoption, right?
Yep.
And there's just so much that's connected. Every electronics now is connected. Yeah. We're so dependent on devices now. That's been the biggest change. Now my parents have, smart TVs and smart everything. So that's I think the biggest, driver of this space has just been that sheer adoption now, where we're seeing the critical mass and the market is just totally taken off. It's totally different. And now you look at IoT and you're starting to shift into other segments where you're seeing technology be adopted. And, I think of construction, talk about an archaic industry, but there is so much technology in construction now for safety purposes, for just building technology or enterprise IoT and quick serve restaurants. It's just insane to see now this wave of technology that keeps coming. And then you look at what's happening with the federal government and funding for EVs and different or electronic vehicles, and you see that coming. I mean, it's just a really exciting time, I think, in the world, in the US specifically for technology. We're just seeing, big leaps forward.
Just thinking about tech, my grandfather just passed away, and one of the coolest things I was able to do is get my grandmother an Apple Watch, and if she falls, it will actually alert us. And, I just think about from a safety perspective, every vertical, is leveraging these products to become more efficient. That leads me to my next question around AI. Is the hype around AI overblown, or are we underrating its trajectory?
I think the potential of AI is, pretty insane. There's no doubt about it. I think the media likes to latch onto it a little bit and, paint some dire pictures and use some fear tactics for people. The reality of AI today and how it's being used is amazing, and solving tons of problem chatbots and different natural language processing and all kinds of video analytics technologies. It's being used everywhere, and it's opening up new types of economies and ecosystems and new jobs for folks that weren't there before. So I think a lot of folks, there's this fear that AI is going to, wipe out everybody's jobs, and, AI is just going to be doing your jobs now. I think there are some, more, legacy types of roles that might change and evolve, but it's opening up new opportunities. So I think for, younger generations, Gen Zers and whatnot that are coming into the workforce now, like they have a huge opportunity to have jobs that, didn't even exist when we were, coming in just,
a 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. So I think that's the exciting thing about a part of it. But the other piece is, there is some reality to, some of the concerns that folks have, and we have to be responsible with it. And, machine learning is real, and, it's gonna happen one way or another. You see the headlines, and we have to be responsible with that, I think, and manage it, and and encourage our political leaders to make sure that they're responsible and making good choices. So I'm excited. I think there's a lot of potential with it, but also I don't think we need to be so afraid of it. We need to embrace it and learn how to really move forward and live with this new technology, because it's a part of everybody's lives every day. Whether you want it to be or not.
I love that. And from my perspective, it's only making us more efficient today, more effective at the work that we do.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that really interested me about what you're up to today is, all of your work with smart cities. I know you've done a ton of research. You've sold products. You've educated cities, companies on these products. What can you tell me about smart cities and what's to come in the future?
I think this goes back to like your question about AI. I mean, there's just so much happening in the smart city space. And you think about, where you live, work, play, governments have a responsibility to, leverage the technologies out there to, provide, the best experience for citizens, and been, exploring that a lot the last 4+ years now, and have learned a lot along the way. And we have piloted tons of different deployments and made tons of mistakes, but it's been, fun to do that too, because you learn from them. And, whether it's, street lighting technology with embedded sensors in that, or, video analytics solutions that you're trying to understand, how many people are, in a particular area of a campus to make it a safer campus, or, water leak technology to, understand using acoustics to find out how much water is flowing through a pipe. And if there's a leaky toilet, it'll tell you to go fix the leak. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing what is out there and available. And, I think the challenge cities have are they don't know where to start, or maybe they're not an expert in any of this technology. And another good example is like with EVs right now and EV charging. Everyone now is tasked at companies. There's, how do I change my fleet out to EV, or how do I accommodate, people coming to my properties that have EVs? How do I become an expert in this, and who do I call? I mean, there's just a lot of confusion. It's a very nascent market right now. And so I think it's still early, but, in the next 5-10 years, we're going to see some really interesting things happen and interesting implementations that are coming. I think digital screens are going to be huge. You see what's happening in Europe with digital screens and advertising. There's screens everywhere. That's coming to the US. There's going to definitely be a ton of, digital advertising and screen technology being deployed. So I am just super excited for the future as it relates to IoT, whether that's on the smart city side or enterprise IoT side. There's really limitless potential with what's coming.
One of the best experiences for me in this trip was getting to see you with your family. And, I think for me, we used to run around together back before we had kids and wives and families. And, I walk into your house and you've got 3 rambunctious kids running around, and it's just amazing things to see. I wanted to ask from your perspective, is technology bringing families closer together, or is it pulling them further apart?
We've never been more connected to, friends and family. I live, 2,500 miles away from my parents, and thank you, FaceTime.
Yeah.
I get to see my parents, every week. I get to see my brother and his kids every week. They get to, engage with our family because of it, and super fortunate for that. So that's a great example of how technology is bringing us together, keeping us closer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't see each other, very often, only a couple times a year. The other side of it, though, is screens, right?
Yeah.
Screens there's a challenge with it, right? Kids get sucked in, right? And then they can become a little nightmarish when you take the screen away. And the other thing I think about as a father now and a parent, they want to emulate what you're doing. And so if you're on your phone looking at your screen, there's a reason why, your kid wants to grab that and, play with it and do the same thing you are doing, because they emulate you, right? And you're not really being present when you do that. So I think that's the challenge that parents have, is like managing how you're more present with your kids with screens and phones. And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard with work and everything else that's going on. But, the pro is we're connected, and you get to, interact with friends and family globally, wherever you are in real time, which is amazing. Downside is obviously you want to be present with your family and your friends when you are in front of them. And so I think it's just the balance, as long as you're able to balance, the two, and be mindful of it, then, I think it's great, and it's a very positive thing, but you also see, the negative of it too.
Yeah, I think about, just hearing you talk about moving and being able to still communicate with your family. I think about my oldest daughter. I spent 7 years apart from her.
Yeah.
But I FaceTimed her every day, and I didn't miss anything. And I think about, what it was like when we were growing up. And if you didn't have a parent around, I mean, it was very difficult to stay connected or stay in the know. And that's one piece of the technology that I'll be forever grateful for, because it's allowed me to be present and be a father. And now obviously I've got to move back, which has been awesome, but helped me over the last 7 years. So Jake, final question here for you. So when you think about the future of technology, what has you most excited?
Accessibility is one thing, right? We look at costs are coming down. So certain technologies that are too expensive to deploy today, or, LiDAR technology, things that NASA developed. I think it's so cool to see that, become, something that's like commercialized, commercial space flight. Like, come on, we're going to go to the moon. You go book a hotel at a private space station. I mean, that's like insane to think, but it's going to happen in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be able to go to a hotel in space, in our lifetime. Like, just to think about that is amazing. And, the young engineers and, just seeing how insanely smart kids are now, and, their ability in coding and everything that we didn't have when we were kids growing up is like curriculum. I mean, I just am so excited to see like what this generation does and creates. We have obviously generations of very smart people, but I mean, they're exposed to things that at a young age that, we were definitely not, taught.
Didn't exist.
Yeah. And so that all these STEM programs that are out there, that's what I'm most excited for, is just like the art of the possible of like what is going to be created that, we haven't even been able to, think about. I think healthcare technology is incredible, for our lives, and just, how long we're living and our quality of life later on. I think that's, pretty amazing as well that we're seeing. But yeah, I want to go to space. That's definitely on my list.
Putting that on. Well, maybe we can go together.
There we go.
That's on my list too.
Hopefully the costs have to come down a bit before I'm gonna sign up. I don't think the multi-million-dollar ticket I'm ready for, but
not yet.
Maybe if you win the lottery or something.
Awesome. Well, Jake, I wanted to thank you for spending the time with me today. Always a pleasure. For our viewers, if you like what we put together today, please like, comment, subscribe, share, and looking forward to seeing you soon on another episode of Conversation.